Have you ever wondered why most general good vendors sell simple wood? It is only used in crafting enchanting wands, and even then those can be bought. So what is this item doing all over Azeroth and beyond? Typically, general goods vendors in WoW sell an assortment of wares, but they usually sell a fixed set of goods that have the same type of items but vary from expansion to expansion. These usually include food, drinks, potions, and sometimes profession reagents, tools, and recipes. Also, before Cataclysm, many also acted as ammo vendors. And before Mist of Pandaria, many general good vendors also served as reagent vendors. For those of you who don't know, in the early years of WoW, many player abilities required reagents to perform, like a druid having to have maple seed in the inventory in order to cast the Rebirth ability. During Classic and the Burning Crusade, in order to make a campfire so you could cook, players needed 2 spell reagents called Simple Wood and Flint and Tinder. Then, in patch 3.1, Flint and Tinder was removed from the game entirely. So players no longer needed to carry those spell reagents around with them, and Flint and Tinder was removed from the inventory of general good vendors. However, since Simple Wood was and still is used in a handful of enchanting, engineering, and inscription items, Blizz did not remove Simple Wood when they removed Flint and Tinder. This was a result of the modern situation where many vendors from the first few expansions still in the game today do not sell profession goods, but still sell Simple Wood. But its function has been changed to a crafting reagent now. It's also safe to bet that Simple Wood would have somehow been figured into the planned survival skills darkness mechanics from WoW's early alpha, in which players could also craft torches. Since patch 3.1, players have been able to summon a campfire at will, which is pretty convenient, even if it does have a 5-minute cooldown. However, in the current expansion, there are still a ton of other ways to get fire for cooking, such as toys and pets. As of writing this video at the end of Dragonflight, there are 18 other ways of setting up a campfire other than using the cooking fire ability. These include 14 fire toys, 2 pets, which are Little Ragnaros and Perry, and finally the Helm of the Fire Festival cosmetic head item. While we're on the topic of spell reagents, most general good vendors still sell Vanishing Powder, because removing an effect from an ability is still considered a spell reagent. So the answer to why general good vendors still sell not only Simple Wood but also Vanishing Powder is because it's a leftover remnant of spell reagent items, which were mostly completely removed from the game in Mist of Pandaria. Finally, this is also the reason that general good vendors from newer expansions sell Gateway Control Shards as well, since it's also a spell reagent in some sense. While on the topic of interesting profession items in early WoW's life, did you know that First Aid was originally going to have an item to resurrect players? During the alpha testing stages, there was an item called Powerful Smelling Salts, which could revive a deceased player. The use of the item was relatively straightforward. Players could simply right-click on the Powerful Smelling Salts to activate the restorative properties. However, the Powerful Smelling Salts were not without their limitations, and unlike modern item resurrection abilities, the item had a significant cooldown, ensuring that players could not abuse its power. This cooldown period prevented players from repeatedly resurrecting fallen comrades in quick succession. Additionally, the Powerful Smelling Salts had a limited number of charges. According to Wowhead comments, it only needed 4 Deep Rock Salt to make, which would have made crafting the item extremely easy, especially for such an OP item. So it's no wonder why Blizzard eventually removed it. Additionally, if you think about it, it doesn't really make much sense that an item, which is used to awaken unconscious people, could now suddenly be used to revive people. The Powerful Smelling Salts remained a fascinating little forgotten piece of WoW's history. The story of the Powerful Smelling Salts does not quite end there, since it was not the first aid profession, but the engineering profession that would eventually get the ability to resurrect players with the Goblin Jumper Cables and the Goblin Jumper Cabers XL in WoW. It seems the Jumper Cables were a second iteration of the Powerful Smelling Salts, making engineers somehow even more OP than they already were, at least when they worked, because they would fail more often than not. Well, on the topic of scrapped profession ideas, did you know that Cooking in Legion was originally planned to be much different with an activity that was called the Cooking Tournament? Presumably, this was going to be some continuation of the previous iterations of the daily cooking quest that stretched back all the way to Shattrath and Northrend Dalaran, and then to the major cities in Cataclysm. Blizzard experimented around with a lot more during the development of Mist of Pandaria, because even Blizz could tell that adding more regular cooking dailies would be too much for players who were already overwhelmed by doing all their other dailies offered in Mist of Pandaria. This experimenting eventually resulted in the Tillers, the Halfhill Farm, the Little Nomi who aspired to be a chef, and the Noodle scenario in the Valley of the Four Winds. We get back to Legion, and in this tradition of making new and interesting cooking content, Blizzard devs ostensibly wanted to try and do something different for Cooking in Legion, and they probably turned to what they had done in Mist of Pandaria for inspiration. This coalesced into the Cooking Tournament in Dalaran during the Legion Alpha. The The cooking tournament would have probably been something like a reality chef kitchen show and a competition, as the data-mined NPCs were judges, which have included some old and familiar faces: Harris Pilton, Nat Pagel, and Sunshin Ironpaw. Interestingly enough, the many new NPC IDs for old returning characters are still in the game files, even though they were never added to the Broken Isles version of Dalaran. So if you ever wondered why cooking in Legion was always so weird and why the entire notion of Nomi burning all your food seemed a little half-baked, it seems to be because halfway through development of Legion, this cooking tournament idea was scrapped and had to be replaced by something in somewhat of a hurry. This is not a bad thing, however, since experimenting and working on various iterations of ideas of cooking events may have eventually given rise to both the Cooking Impossible PvP Brawl and the Community Feast and Azure Span, although this is purely speculation on our part. We now turn our attention to Pandaria. Nestled amidst the verdant fields of the Valley of the Four Winds, high atop a small mountain overlooking the quaint hamlet of Halfhill, resides a peculiar goat named Halfhill Kid. Unassuming in appearance, this goat harbors a dark and unexpected secret. When unsuspecting adventurers interact with it, they're greeted with a bone-chilling scream that pierces the tranquility of the valley. Far from the familiar ba-ba one might associate with goats, the Halfhill Kid unleashes a near-human yell that sends shivers down the spine. The eerily close resemblance of the goat's cry to that of a human is unsettling, leaving players with a lingering discomfort. This phenomenon is reminiscent of a viral video from 2012 showcasing a goat in Peru emitting a spine-tingling scream that bears an uncanny resemblance to a human wail. It's believed that the Halfhill Kid scream is a subtle nod to this internet sensation. The addition of the Halfhill Kid in patch 5.3, which was released May 2013, further supports the reference. The timeline aligns perfectly, suggesting that the developers drew inspiration from the viral video when creating this unique character. While internet meme references are not uncommon in World of Warcraft, the Halfhill Kid stands out as a testament to the attention to detail and creativity of the game designers. It is incredible to think that such a seemingly insignificant detail can go unnoticed for years, highlighting the vast and intricate world the developers have crafted for players to explore. What makes the Halfhill Kid even more intriguing is that it is the only goat in the game to use this specific voice file. This distinctive feature sets it apart from other goats, making it a truly unique individual, and I'm not kidding. For our next interesting NPC, we'll be traveling to Kul Tiras, which was one of the 2 landmasses added during the Battle for Azeroth expansion. In the mystical and spooky realm of Drustvar, there is a weird creature known as Athair. This colossal white stag has a coat of pure white fur, much like the snow that can be found in the mountains of Drustvar. Athair's origins are shrouded in mystery, but the legends surrounding him have been whispered throughout Drustvar for generations. Some say Athair is a guardian of the ancient forests, watching over the sacred groves and protecting the delicate balance of nature. Others believe he is the manifestation of the wild magic that courses throughout the land, a creature born from the very essence of Drustvar itself. Indeed, his title in-game is Heart of the Forest. These facts have led to speculation in the community about whether Athair might be a wild god, akin to Ursoc or Goldrin, for example, and there is plenty of evidence to support this theory. For example, it was Aram Waycrest, the founder of House Waycrest, who was the first recorded person to make conversation and find a common cause with the creature. This means Athair is at least thousands of years old, since that was how long ago Aram Waycrest lived. Furthermore, Ulfar, the head Thornspeaker, says to hunters that the magic of Drustvar has come to inhabit some of the animals of the land, who are powerful manifestations of nature to be respected. In-game, Athair can be found to the southwest of the village of Fallenhaven in the northeast part of the zone. When clicked, his response is, Athair regards you steadily. However, when druids interact with him, the response is, Athair regards you warmly. Additionally, he also serves as an innkeeper, but only for druids. Athair also blessed the very first Thornspeaker druids, as described in one of the tablets in Drustvar, called Drusteel, Protectors of the Forest. The description of the monolith reads, a great bramble bear, possibly a Drust druid, is posed with their head bowed to a massive stag in doe. The deer appears to be blessing the bear or accepting its supplication. The stag's coat was once whitewashed, while the doe's was covered with blackened soot. The deer here is Athane, who only appears at night besides Athair. Her title is Secret Keeper of the Forest, and she has some Elune imagery with her, since she has eyes that glow like arcane stars, as well as a crescent moon above her head. Ulfuar can also be seen sometimes in close proximity to Athane. Given Athain seems to be the companion or lover of Athair, she too is possibly another wild god or something similar. There are many wild gods and many have a distinct animal form. However, there is only one which has the shape of a massive white stag, and that is Malorn. Malorn is an ancient guardian who fought in the War of the Ancients and was rescued by druids in the Legion campaign. Suffice it to say, he has a long history and is also widely held to be the father of Sonaris. So if you ever wondered why Sonaris and Malfurion have antlers, it's because Elune is really into them. But joking aside, stags and deers do share a deep connection to Elune, and there is a reason the default druid ground form is a stag or doe. Given the fact that Athair and Malorn are both deer, and Athain and Elune both have moon and star imagery, these similarities appear to be there for a reason. Perhaps there are more children of Elune and Malorn, or are some aspects of these beings themselves. However, Athain did have a slight use finally 2 expansions later from their introduction in the Dragonflight, Guardians of the Dream Patch. Athain is a signature key to helping Beastmaster Hunter players able to tame the only existing wicker beast in the game. To do so, you must first loot a thorn-laden heart, which has a low chance to drop from Dream Sabers or Flame Cats located in the Emerald Dream Zone. That's if you want the cat version of Wicker Beast at least. If you wish for the stag or bear forms, you will instead farm stags or bears in the dream instead, and get a heart of the same name, but the flavor text will mention which heart is different. With this heart, you will visit Athain and Drustvar and present it to her. In return, she will give you the Moon Touch Thorns to be brought to Ulfar. You will then tell him, "I have seen some animals," and Ulfar will give you the Thorn Speaker Ritual Knife. With this knife, you must return to the Emerald Dream and locate Lily Una's cave, and the NPC of the same name will spawn a Dream Saber. Just kill her after she spawns, and use the ritual knife on the corpse to spawn a Wicker Beast Thornclaw that the BM Hunter can then obtain. This actually leads to a theory that Athain is possibly the mother of Wicker Beasts in a way, as she directly leads you into your involvement of creating more from the original source of the Emerald Dream itself. Since there has been no confirmation from Blizzard, the true identity and nature of both Athair and Athain remain unknown, but they sure are fun to speculate about. We'll be continuing on our Wild God speculation for a bit longer. On the Isle of Thunder, which is the home to Lei Shen's Fortress, the Throne of Thunder, players can find a huge giant squid called the Felled Leviathan. This massive kraken is beached a little off the northwest part of the island, and pretty close to the Blood Elf encampment. The massive beast appears to have been killed by an enormous Zandalari projectile, and it can be seen sticking out of its mouth. For such a terrifying creature, Blizzard has made only 2 krakens as major villains and monsters, which is rather surprising, especially considering how much Blizzard loves old gods and their tentacles. Sure, there are a couple of rares and world bosses that are kraken, but given their enormity and capability for such massive destruction, one is to wonder why we've not seen more krakens appear in the game. Of course, they could just be shy, purposefully hiding, or it might just be that players don't like underwater zones where most krakens would be found. But it could also be for much more sinister reasons. With titles such as Terror of the Deep and Fiend of the Dark Below, krakens do not appear to be the friendly sort, and seem to have some connection to the old gods. Yet, even with N'Zoth tentacly time at the end of Battle for Azeroth, we only ever saw 2 important krakens, which makes it seem to be that there is an almost suspicious lack of them. It should be noted that Blizzard calls multiple creatures krakens in-game, but for our purposes for krakens, we'll be sticking to the giant ocean-dwelling octopi and squids. One kraken is named Vigoth and appears in the Battle for Azeroth expansion, but was used sparingly and only seen briefly in Stormsong Valley by Alliance players and served as the final boss of the Siege of Borealis dungeon. Azamat is the biggest named Kraken boy, and he has a very interesting description in the Throne of Tides dungeon. Azamat is stated to be the patriarch of all Kraken, and such a force to be reckoned with that even Neptulon, the elemental lord of water, has a tough time with him and needs players to defend him. With such power and being a patriarch of all Kraken, there is speculation that Azamat could be some sort of wild god. Given Azamat escaped at the end of the Throne of Tides, it is likely he could have originally been intended to play some part of the Scrapped Abyssal Maw raid, perhaps even as a boss. Azamat was not completely forgotten, however, as he does make an appearance in the ocean outside of Nashatar in Battle for Azeroth, but he cannot be interacted with. Azamat being a wild god does make some sense, since 2 other wild gods were introduced in Vashj'ir as well. Both Nespira and Lagorak are similar-looking giant deep-sea cephalopod creatures with chitinous shells. These 2 behemoths play a central role when questing Vashj'ir, where the players work to free them of the Naga's control. Nespira is successfully freed, but Lagorak dies after being freed. The Naga controlling these creatures is a crucial plot point, because Azamat is also said to be under the control of the Naga. So the precedent of Naga controlling a wild god is already established, if Azamat is indeed a wild god. Cataclysm also saw the Twilight Hammer trying to create evil versions of wild gods in Mount Hyjal. These spirits were called Dark Ancients and included Lycanthoth, the evil version of Goldrin, and Nemesis, the evil version of Tortola. Both of these creatures were slain by the adventurer. But it is also once again established that the old gods can somehow corrupt wild gods as well, perhaps in the same manner the Naga did to Azamat. Of course, there is still a lot we do not know about wild gods, and the Emerald Dream patch in 10.2 is hinted to be something very different than what players were initially led to believe, which in turn may greatly affect what wild gods actually may be as well. In addition to that, both wild gods and Loas also have agency and distinct personalities, which can make them even more unpredictable. Mist of Pandaria, WoW's 4th expansion, launched on the 25th of September in 2012. Another video game you might have heard about is called The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, which launched on the 11th of November 2011. I've been playing a lot of Mist of Pandaria Remix lately, and I've never noticed just how many references there are to Skyrim. Both video games explore high fantasy worlds with rich backgrounds and lore, with elements of role-playing games. So it should come as no surprise that many Blizzard developers played Skyrim when it first came out as well. Skyrim quickly became, and remains to this day, one of the most popular video games of all time. It seems that many Blizzard devs were playing Skyrim while working on Mist of Pandaria, as the expansion is just full of references to the game. We'll take a quick look at 3 notable examples, but there are probably still a ton other small references to Skyrim Mist that we missed or simply omitted for the sake of brevity. We'll start by looking at the most famous, or probably more aptly described as infamous, quotes from Skyrim that has somehow found their way into WoW. While questing in the Krasarang Wilds, players will run into Koro Mistwalker, who starts the quest Unsafe Passage. This quest is an escort one, which is everyone's favorite type of quest in WoW, but at least it's very simple and easy. During the quest, players help rescue several refugees from the recently shot-infested Temple of the Red Crane, and help bring them to safety of the Crane Wing Refuge. The quest description isn't really too important, however, because a little way into the quest, Koro Mistwalker is ambushed by some Solrock archers. This results in Koro Mistwalker delivering the quote that guards in Skyrim are fond of saying, when after the ambush, Koro tells the adventurer,
"Help me up. I took an arrow in the knee."
This is lifted directly from Skyrim, where the quote is, "I used to be an adventurer like you, then I took an arrow in the knee." This phrase has transcended the boundaries of Skyrim and become one of the most meme-worthy quotes in history, making its way into pop culture even, at least to most people who know what an internet is. As players delved into the northern central region of Tamriel, they often encountered guards stationed at various locations, serving as protectors of the realm. These guards would often complain about their various tasks, to the point that these quotes they repeat so much can be kind of annoying. The consensus seems to be that taking an arrow in the knee is a euphemism for getting married. As it does, the internet community quickly embraced this quote, transforming it into a viral meme. It appeared in countless videos, images, and articles, often accompanied by humorous or ironic captions. It even has its own Wikipedia page, which is how you know it's a big deal. This would not be the last quote that was added to the game, but it was the first and original one. Another memeingly disparate garden line from Skyrim is, have you seen those warriors from Hammerfell? They have curved swords. Curved swords. The guard's emphasis on the curved nature of the swords, punctuated by his exaggerated annotation, creates an unforgettable line that you wish you would stop hearing. When dismissing the Grand Expedition Yak Mount, Mystic Birdhat occasionally pays homage to this iconic Skyrim quote, uttering, "Those Yungol have straight swords." Straight swords. This is another meme quote from Skyrim, and pretty much just a smaller example of the arrow in the knee quote. Both NPCs on the Mount can say various lines or jokes, and the Mount is dismissed, and all the lines are references to other video games. Aside from Mystic Birdhat, who is a transmogrifier, there is also Cousin Slowhands, who is a repair and general goods vendor. Some of these other banger lines they can give include Yak never changes, which is a reference to the Fallout series, and you could die of dysentery out here, which of course is a reference to the game Oregon Trail. During the main timeline of Skyrim, the Dragonborn undertakes a significant journey to seek the guidance of the Greybeards, a secluded order of mythical priests residing atop the imposing High Hrothgar, a towering mountain that pierces the sky above Tamriel. This pilgrimage holds deep spiritual significance, mirroring similar journeys found in various narratives, particularly in Buddhism, where spiritual enlightenment is often sought through arduous physical and mental challenges. The quest in Skyrim involving the Greybeards, which is called The Way of the Voice, shares striking similarities with 2 distinct areas in quests in Mist of Pandaria, strongly suggesting that the latter may have been influenced by the former. In Skyrim, the ascent to High Hrothgar is a transformative experience that tests the Dragonborn's resolve. The journey involves navigating treacherous paths, enduring harsh weather conditions, and confronting formidable adversaries. Similarly, in Mist of Pandaria, 2 specific areas invoke a similar sense of challenging spiritual ascent. The first of these areas is the Veiled Stair, which is a quite literal ascent from the Valley of the Four Winds through a tunnel into Kunlai Summit via the Path of the 100 Steps. While the spiritual elements in the mini-zone that the entrance to the Terrans of Endless Spring raid is located in may be more subdued, they are still present in the undertones during the quest in which Wrathion is trying to figure things out for himself, and reckon who he is while he's in the Tavern of the Mists. In a campaign quest in patch 5.3 entitled Escalation, the adventurer embarks on an arduous journey to the summit of Mount Everest, a mountain that soars high into the sky, dwarfing all of the other peaks in the region. The path leading up to the mountain is treacherous, filled with narrow ledges, treacherous crevasses, and icy slopes that threaten to send the unwary adventurer plummeting to their doom. This quest is much more reminiscent of the one in Skyrim, with annoying enemies, bitter cold, and a long trek. At the peak of Mount Everest, the adventurer meets Emperor Xiaohao. Xiaohao has been waiting for the adventurer, and he has much to say about the future of the world and the player's part in it. The conversations with the Emperor is long and informative, and it reveals many secrets about the history and destiny of Pandaria, with the biggest bomb drop being that Xiaohao admitted that he never conquered the Sha Pride. While the quests in Skyrim and Mists of Pandaria differ in their specific narratives, they share a common theme of spiritual transformation through a challenging journey. Both experiences involve confronting inner demons, overcoming obstacles, and ultimately achieving a deeper understanding of oneself and one's place in the world. The parallels between these two quests suggest the developers of Mists of Pandaria may have drawn inspiration from Skyrim, with the similarities in setting, atmosphere, and thematic elements leading credence to this theory. The final direct reference to Skyrim Mists of Pandaria that we'll look at is the most interesting one. In the village of Zuchen in the far northeast of Kunlai Summit, you can find a jar of fireflies on the table in the Northwind Tavern. This item is even given a name and is called Cryptic Bug Jar. Two villagers can be found arguing near it, with one saying that it holds some secret meaning, and the other saying the jar has no significance. This is directly mirroring the bug jars found in Skyrim, which were miscellaneous objects that can be found throughout the world. When Skyrim first came out, there was much speculation as to what these bug jars were used for, since there was no retrieval quest that used them. People would speculate about what they could be and if they were part of some secret quest. The connection here is that the Pandaria and Kunlai Summit are asking some very similar questions. As for the mystery of the bug jars, a Skyrim dev eventually revealed that they were for an unimplemented quest, but the items had not been removed from the game before it was shipped. Still, this little tidbit shows that at least one WoW dev took an active interest in not just Skyrim, but also its quests, secrets, and inner mechanisms, which highlights even more just how much of an influence Skyrim had on not only the developers and IPs, but on pop video game culture as a whole. We're nearing the end of this video, but before we go, here are 3 fast fun facts. Did you know that both Xal'atath and Alexstrasza can speak to Murlocs? Both of these characters are shown to be able to understand Nurglish, the language of the Murloc in Makura. Xal'atath demonstrates his ability during a quest in the Kultaras in Battle for Azeroth, and Alexstrasza talks to her Murloc counterpart from Azmorloth during a Time Rift in Dragonflight. Mira is a Vulpera from Vol'dun, who most players know for her toy, Mira's Jukebox. This toy, when placed down, plays Dolly and Dot are my best friends. What most players do not know, however, is that Mira is voiced by Diva Marie, who is the wife of WoW's lead cinematic narrative designer, Taryn Gregory. Our final little fun fact is that sometimes on the Black Market Auction House, one can find Garrosh's Tusks of Manaroth, which have a very low chance to drop from him in the Siege of Orgrimmar. The seller of the tusk is none other than the Sha Pride itself, which is rather amusing. The Sha Pride is not the only deceased raid boss to sell items on the Black Market Auction House, since Major Domo Executives from the Molten Core also sells the Little Nefarian Pet and the Obsidian Worldbreaker mount on the Black Market Auction House. And that does it for this unknown side of WoW video. Thanks for watching and giving me the privilege of your time, and we'll see you in the next video.